This Chat with the Experts is brought to you by Angie's List on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to Chat with the Experts, brought to you by Angie's List. I'm Kyle Hawk, and I'm joined today by Tim Dages, who's talking us through the upcoming tax season with some tips on how to file and answers to common questions. We've got plenty more to come on today's show, including answers to your listener questions in just a moment. But first, we want to share 3 things you should know when it comes to filing for a tax extension. Now, this year, tax day falls on April 18th, but if you find the date breathing down your neck in a few short months, there's an opportunity for you to request an extension, and anyone can get a federal extension from the IRS by submitting Form 4868. It's the application for automatic extension of time to file U.S. individual income tax returns. Before you make that request, though, Shannon Antonori, our Angie's List Chicago writer, has a few things that you should know. First, a federal income tax extension will get you another 6 months to file your federal taxes, meaning your new deadline this year would be October 18th. And different states may have different deadlines for state income tax returns, so be sure to investigate. And remember, a tax extension gives you more time to file your taxes, but not more time to pay, so be prepared. Secondly, in some states, anyone who receives an extension to file their federal tax return automatically gets the same extension to file their state return, but some states do require that taxpayers submit a separate form to get a state tax extension. So it's important to really check your state's tax authority before April 18th so you have the proper amount of time to file for state extensions should you need to do so. Third, if you're worried about the cost, fear not. It's free to request a federal tax extension. However, if you underestimate the taxes you owe or pay them late, the financial penalty could be pretty hefty. And for around $30, services such as File Later will actually request an extension for you and calculate your estimated taxes owed. Your tax preparer or tax software that you normally use should be able to guide you through the extension process. If you'd like more information on filing a tax extension or for just some general answers to the tax questions you have, you can get all kinds of information by going to angieslist.com/articles. All right, those are 3 things you should know today, and now it is time to take your listener questions. As always, we took these questions from Facebook, Twitter, and our online Angie's List Answers forum. They've got questions about their tax returns, and Tim is here to help them out. Tim, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's start with a question from Justin. He wants to know the biggest changes he should be aware of when filing his taxes in 2016. Is there anything that changed from last year people should know about?
The biggest issue this year is with the continuing involvement of the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. And for 2015 returns, there is going to be more reportable information. Individuals who have received 1099s from either their employer or their insurance carrier if they had health insurance during 2015.
Yeah.
Those forms will show the periods of time that you had coverage, which is important when the return is completed, because if you do not have coverage, there is penalties that are associated with that. And for each year, as we move out further from the implementation of that, those penalties become greater. And so 15 is another year with an increase in the penalty.
Yeah, very good to know all of that. Jeremy wants to know what he should do if he notices an error on his W-2 form.
First thing he should do is reach out to his employer, point the error out to him, have them look into it. They may file a corrected W-2, get that to him. He would need to have that done prior to filing his tax return. If he gets nowhere with his employer, or the employer is maybe out of business, there are forms that can be filed along with your tax return that say, okay, here's what the information that was reported to the IRS on the original W-2, but that was incorrect, and here's the corrected information.
Okay. Karen wants to know if she has to pay taxes on Social Security payments.
It is possible. It comes down to income levels and whether or not you exceed those income levels, and a portion of the portion of the Social Security can become taxable at that time.
Yeah, very good. Valerie wants to know, as a full-time student, is she exempt from federal income taxes?
No, you're not exempt. Most individuals will get a standard deduction up to $4,000 for 2015 for an individual. Anything over and above that is going to be taxable income to you. Most full-time students are still claimed as dependents on their
Right.
parents' returns, so you don't get a personal exemption. So you're looking at that standard deduction level. If by chance you don't make that much money and you've had income tax withheld from your wages as you worked, you'll need to file a return to get your taxes that you paid in back to get that
Right.
refund. If when you go to look at finding your job for 2015, if you had no tax liability on your 2015 return and you know you're not going to owe any tax or have any tax liability because you're not
Yeah.
going to make enough money in 2016 when you work, you can fill out your W-4 and check the exempt box.
Okay.
Which then that puts the employer on notice that you do not have to have any withholding. Now, the downside to that is if you miscalculate and end up making too much money, well, then you're going to owe some tax when you
Yeah.
file your return.
Right. Morgan wants to know if the IRS approves or endorses any of the online tax filing options.
They do not.
Okay. And so, what does that mean, though? I mean, does that mean that people should just steer clear, or is that just simply saying the IRS is not saying this will or isn't the best option for
Right.
you?
They are not going to step forward and say that, put their name behind any one particular vendor.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much a buyer beware.
Yeah.
There are options that you can get that if you go through the IRS website, some filing software that you can obtain there. And again, they're not necessarily endorsing it.
Right.
They are just making it available through their website.
Yeah. Dylan asks how to tell if he and a spouse should file separately or jointly, or if there's ever a time where filing separately makes any sense at all.
There are occasions where filing separately will make sense. Typically, when there's a large income disparity between the spouses,
Okay.
One makes a lot, the other one doesn't make a whole lot. And the lower earning spouse has a lot of medical expenses. Because the one thing with filing separately is both returns have to be filed the same way. If one takes a standard deduction, the other one has to take a standard deduction. If one itemizes, the other one has to itemize. Well, when you have that income disparity and medical expenses for the lower earning spouse, sometimes you can benefit from having the medical expenses become deductible on the Schedule A, which is not normally the case for most individuals.
Right.
And there are times where there can be some legal issues or some tax issues that are still haunting one or the other spouse,
Sure.
and it may make sense to file separately to kind of keep those two issues from being commingled between the two spouses. So, there are times where it does make sense, but it's rare.
Yeah, and this is another thing, if you're filing your taxes on your own, a lot of times you're not going to know which way to file is going to be most beneficial for you. I would imagine you as the tax preparer, you've been doing this over 20 years. When somebody comes in, they hand you the paperwork. I mean, you're able to know immediately what the right direction for them to go is.
Well, there would be a conversation. Typically they come in thinking that might be the way they want to go, and then depending on facts and circumstances. But once the return is done, the process that we would go through would be to prepare the return as a joint return and then manipulate the information to show what it would look like if both returns were filed married separate.
Right.
And then just get a comparison of the total tax liability.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes even though there is more tax liability from filing separate, there may be reasons that somebody wants to do that.
Sure. Well, that is going to do it for our listener questions this week. Really good questions and great information from Tim. Huge thank you to everyone out there for submitting questions this week. If you've got one you want to ask us, find Angie's List on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, or you can visit our online Angie's List Answers forum. It's answers.angieslist.com. You can ask your question there. It may appear on the show, but you can also get help right there on the forum from other homeowners such as yourself and qualified service provider experts. Check it out at answers.angieslist.com. Tim, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to come on the show and talk with us. We really appreciate all the great advice.
Thank you, Kyle. It was my pleasure.
That's going to do it for Tim Dages of Bogdanoff, Dages & Company. But we're not done just yet. Coming up, we're going to welcome in Angie's List interactive media writer Amanda Bell to talk about budgeting around the home this year and a whole lot more. Keep it right here. You're listening to Chat with the Experts.
Angie's List believes that hiring great local service providers should be easy. Whether you need a plumber or a pet sitter, you can find one at angieslist.com. See ratings and reviews in hundreds of categories, shop popular offers, and request scheduling assistance directly online. Memberships start at just $9.99 per year. That's less than $1 a month. Join today and get 40% off with promo code WIBC40. Visit angieslist.com to sign up.